just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down tonight. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we're gonna light it up tonight. We're gonna light it up tonight. We're gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We're gonna light it up now.
Welcome to the HVAC Guide live show where we talk about all things HVAC that no one else is talking about, answering your questions live. Sometimes we are joined by other pros in the chat who might know answers to questions that I don't. Tonight we have a special guest, an expert in our industry. But before we bring on Ty, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping matters. The first is the live show. If you haven't seen my show or if you haven't been keeping up, we're moving everything. We're moving the show to its own channel. And so if you search for HVAC Guide Live Show, it's going to have its own channel now. We're going to be moving everything over there. If you can't find it, just go to our old channel, HVAC Guide for Homeowners, scroll all the way to the bottom of the channel, and you'll see the new channel right there. You'll be able to subscribe right there. Make sure you subscribe to the new channel because it won't be long, not much longer, and we will not be broadcasting to the old channel anymore. So if you're not subscribed to the new channel, you won't be getting the lovely notifications of this fat face popping up. So make sure you get subscribed to the new channel. The next thing I want to cover is next week we'll be right back, just like every Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. And next week's guest is him and his partner are they do marketing and some of the behind the scenes stuff with a lot of HVAC contractors. And they actually have a show called HVAC Secrets Revealed. And I'm excited about next week's show. Make sure you're here next week because you're going to get to kind of ask some of those nitty gritty questions, some of those behind the scenes secretive questions that maybe you don't get to normally, ask someone firsthand, what the deal is. That said, let's take a moment, let's pay the bills and thank the sponsor of tonight's show. I wanted to take a quick break from the video and thank the sponsor of this video, AeroSeal. Leaky ductwork is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, energy wasters in most homes in the United States. And my favorite way of fixing that problem is AeroSeal. They'll come into your home, they'll test your ductwork and how leaky it is, they'll seal all the ductwork with a machine, and then they'll test it again and make sure that you got what you paid for. Customers have reported a significant savings on their energy bills after using AeroSeal. I'll put a link down in the description of this video. Thanks again to AeroSeal, and now let's get back to the video. There we go. I couldn't. The software I use, I can't tell on my main screen when the video is actually playing. So hopefully you guys did not see me flossing my teeth behind the scenes there. I don't know. It's hard for me to tell. You might have seen it. You may not have. We'll see. That said, tonight's guest is an expert in the HVAC field educating many through live trainings, his role at the ESCO Institute, and his YouTube channel, Love2HVAC. Make sure you go and give him a subscribe. Ty's style have made him a standout by teaching many using fresh but simple concepts while doing sometimes what looks like fun home science experiments. I hope it's okay to say that, Ty. I love some of the blowing up barrels and crazy stuff you do. Some of you have heard me say that if there was a Mount Rushmore of HVAC educators across the country, Ty would be one of the faces on it. Everyone, do me a favor and welcome Ty Branaman. They were
Hello.
lined up outside. Welcome to the show, pal.
That was quite the intro. I've never been introduced like that. It's awesome seeing my people here on the side too. Man, sure glad to see you guys supporting and being here.
Yeah, man, this is a lively chat already. So hello to everybody that's here. Steve, Liliana, Ryan, I think his name's Ryan, right? Hughes man.
Yeah, Ryan.
Yep. I just didn't want to get that wrong and be that guy. Gary, and yeah, a number of folks. Perla, is Perla one of your folks? I see the last name there.
I know her.
You know her?
She's a roommate of mine, and like we go out to eat all the time. And oh yeah, I'm married to her.
Oh, so you kind of know her a little bit. That's funny.
She's amazing. She's absolutely amazing.
And hello to Sheldon. Yeah, thank you guys for coming, and Ty, thank you for being here. As I was saying before we got on the show, this has been a long journey. I think we've exchanged emails over the years, and not long ago you had a little bit of a scare, and you were supposed to be on, and it's just been no matter how much they try to hold us back, we finally got you here. We got you finally on here. So,
and I appreciate you having me here. I thank you for that. Sorry about having to miss last time. I am such an optimist. I thought, oh yeah, it's just going to be a surgery, no big deal. Surprise. Yeah, it was way worse than I thought it was going to be. So really appreciate everybody's support on that. And I'm feeling really good now. So it's great to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. We've even got someone here from Colombia. Is this one of your folks too, or is Juan just wandering in here and finding us? Do you know Juan?
I know lots of ones. I can't keep up with everybody. I'm having a hard time keeping up with some people.
Got it. Okay, just checking. Well, let's start from the beginning, Ty. I've never actually got to have any in-depth conversations with you. Let's back up a little bit. Tell me your story. How did you get to where you are now? Where did you start out?
So the big inning. Well, I don't watch much baseball anymore, but I did start out in about 1995. Was when I officially started getting paychecks working with my dad. He has a sheet metal man, and so I was working with him, and I love my dad. I absolutely love him. Cannot work with him. Still to this day, I cannot work with him. I love my dad, but I cannot work with him. So I started working for another company, and I loved what I did. And this guy would drive by. We were installing new construction, right? Pulling flex, running across your knees, and I'm, the young guy getting tools thrown at you, like, it was not a great job, but it was a job, and it wasn't working with my dad. So I was like, hey, it's a win. And this guy would pull up in this van, and he would never get out of the van. Everybody would go talk to him. And he had this big old like Slurpee cup. And then he would leave. And sometimes he'd come by 2 or 3 times a day. And sometimes, he wouldn't come by for a few days. But I was like, is that one of the owners? And they're like, oh no, that's just a service guy. I'm like, what? How do I get that job? I was like, oh, well, you got to like read and learn stuff and, and use meters, and like, sold. And so I had some learning disabilities, but I was like, that is my goal. Like, I'm going to get in that van because that was awesome. And it's been a journey ever since. Once I started learning, I just kept learning and had my own company, and then got into education, and I love education and helping other people, and it's been great.
What was your company called? I'm just very curious.
It was Paradise Heating and Cooling, maintaining your indoor paradise.
I love it. Love the branding. That's pretty clever.
It's still in business today, so it's
Nice. Very cool. There is definitely a delay that you were talking about. I can definitely tell there's your reactions to some of the things I'm saying. There definitely is a delay, probably on my end, but well, I'm sure we'll get through it.
Oh, it'll
um,
be fine.
That's really cool though. So fast forward to today. Sometimes I do follow your content, and I know it wasn't long ago you had a barrel implode and it scared you. And I teach classes now, and I've referenced that video probably at least half a dozen times now in my classes, because I'll get students all the time and they'll say, well, how do I further my education? How do I and a lot of times, I don't know how you feel, but it's amazing the plethora of information that you can get just by watching. I mean, I tell guys all the time, if you go home and watch, Ty, Craig, and Brian, yeah, Brian, you watch those three guys' videos, 20 videos every night, you're going to be further along than most in our trade. I feel like, you know,
It's
yeah,
great
go
to
ahead.
be a part of that group, and they, and there's just incredible people. I mean, they truly caring people, and I think that is awesome. And for me, I struggle to learn this stuff. When I'm reading something, I have to read it 4 or 5 or 10 times. I have to have highlighters and sticky notes, and I have to rewrite it, and have all these things I do when I learn something new, and then I rewrite it again to make sure that it really sticks. So it's difficult for me to take that tech stuff and interpret it. And over the years, I've been able to figure out from the manufacturer or the engineer's mindset. And then I think, how could I explain that to me? Like somebody who struggles reading this and loses interest quickly, and oh, hey, look, a squirrel. How can I get that person, me, to get this information? So the things I do is really about that, about bringing that truth in. I mean, I learned from some really great people, but a lot of stuff I first learned was just not true, and I had to relearn it, and a lot of the information came from the books, and so I wanted to get that information out to more people, and it's great to be able to work with some of the people like Craig Michelaccio and Brian Orr, and there's so many Chris Stevens, and there's so many great, amazing people out there that were doing that same thing of trying to help people get the information out and get the facts out, and some of the things that I teach, it's so different than how people learned. People get really offended. It's like we spend 10% of our lives learning and 90% defending what we think we know. So sometimes people get very, very angry that I'm saying something that goes against what they were first taught. And I'm like, I'm not attacking you. It's the information.
Yeah. I wish there well, I don't know how you feel, but I do feel like it's gotten better. So as far as content creation, there's almost this fraternity of folks like you and some that we've already mentioned, where their hearts are in the right place and they are just trying to help others in our trade, where I feel like that's kind of new. Like that's, it's maybe not as new as it once was, but there's a lot of folks that are trying to get some good info out now, and I just love that the direction that a lot of that's going. I think it's funny that you mentioned that though, because you'll sometimes even like cut things open just to prove a point. Like, you're like, this is the inside of a recovery tank, and this is why it makes sense to do it this way versus that way. Um, yeah, it's
And I
really
like to
cool.
see it. For me, it's like, okay, you've told me that, but what does that really mean? And I'm okay when people say, hey, I get what you're saying, but I don't know that I believe that. And I will either source the information or I will find a way to cut it open and show that example. As long as people want to know like why, or at least mostly why, they can be skeptical, want to know mostly why. I'm all in. Like, how can I figure another way out to explain this? I'm all in. And that's what makes it, fun. That's what keeps us growing as educators is how can I get it to where this person will understand it? And what I find is even though they won't say anything, there's a lot of people that really appreciate that information. A lot of times we only hear from the trolls, but there's a lot of really great info people out there that say, "Hey, that has helped me," and that gets me to do one more video, and then one more video. And sometimes I'm thinking, you know what? I think I'm done with social media. Then if somebody says, "Man, that really helped me. I appreciate that." I'm like, okay, well, I can do one more video.
You mentioned that you were maybe taught some things that were not so correct, and then you started learning the correct way on certain things. Was there anything that you can think of off the top of your head that was like the biggest aha moment, like, out of all the things that you were maybe being taught wrong?
Wow, the list is long. So, the duculator for sizing ducts, before I learned manual D, and sometimes I still struggle with manual D. It's like it's a great book, but I have to have some people that I rely on to help translate that information for me. So I'm still, learning, and that's why I haven't done any duct manuals. Because every time I think I got this down after all these years, somebody's like, "Oh, well, have you thought of this?" Like Ed Janowak, like he's a brilliant guy. He's doesn't sugarcoat nothing. He's like, "Nope, wrong," and I'm like, oh, man, I thought I had that one down. So, like, the duculator sizing, we had these cheat sheets, but they were really in-depth and long, and I thought I really had that down, and then I learned about, blower door testing and duct leakage and, how air moves between doors and rooms, and then I learned about flow from the grills, manual T, and then I realized, man, you can be the best person in your city doing something, but it still doesn't mean it's the right way. So I'm even down to vacuums, like, one of the early vacuum pumps I had is an analog vacuum gauge. It's back here, but I had somebody telling me that, oh, well, once you hear the vacuum pump change noise, your microns are good. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right, but okay. I mean, I'm going to believe this person. And then you learn, no, like that's not even anywhere. Like I wish I could go back and kick my own butt because like how many systems had short lives because of that, and so there's charging, I used to be told that no matter what metering device, it's going to be this superheat. And then you learn about how the metering device work and how the TXV works differently. And, there's all these little shortcuts that it's just not true. So I'm out there trying to be like, hey, I learned this wrong. Let me correct my wrongs by showing other people the right way. And they can choose to do it or not. But I figure if people should at least have access to the information. Like I can't make people do everything the right way, but I can at least say, here is a better way, and you can make that choice.
Yeah. That's really funny. Hey, at least you pulled a vacuum on those. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of systems out there that I remember years ago. I mean, this was probably, I mean, we're talking, maybe even YouTube was in its infancy. And I remember a guy he cut the copper line set and showed, brazing with and without nitrogen and the differences. And I remember back then going, oh, that makes way more sense now.
Stephen mentioned this book, A Review of Vacuum for the Service Engineers. This originally dates to like the 1950s. And so we talk about these things like they're new, but it's been around forever. Now, Jim Bergman and Brian Orr updated it. And you were talking about flowing nitrogen. I have a carrier training book from 1964 that talks about pulling a deep vacuum and shows flowing nitrogen. So we talk about this stuff being new, but it's not. A lot of it's just new to us. We had these habits we could get away with because we had mineral oil, it was very forgiving. We had R22, it was very forgiving. We had these low SEER systems that were forgiving, so we could get away with it. It was still wrong, but we could get away with it. And now we're kind of learning, oh, now as we get more precise on the SEER ratings, that old stuff, it's not new. It's just, hey, it's more important now.
Well, the fact that the POE oil becomes acidic if you're not doing things properly as well, right? I mean, that was not as as prevalent or as big of a deal at one point either. So
Yes.
that
And
makes a
copper
difference,
plating was an issue back with R22, and now that we have POE that it wants moisture, like it's looking to absorb moisture, and we leave it that moisture, it turns to an acid, and that's starts eating away at the coils, eating away at the copper lines, causing leaks, causing copper plating, and then the compressor has a hard time starting because all this copper plating and all the moving parts. And then we think, oh, it's just a weak compressor. We just need to add a start kit. And we don't connect that all of these steps all the way down here to, well, I've never pulled a vacuum properly and I never had an issue. And then that same person says, oh, these TXVs, all they do is fail. And that same person says, oh, you only get about 8 years of these compressors. And that's even with the start kit. And you're like, you say you've never had a problem, but you've never connected it.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I want to switch gears. What's something that I know you have quite the following. You've got, you're blowing up barrels and cutting open recovery tanks and all these cool things on your YouTube channel. What's something that many don't know about you that would be cool to know?
I love to travel, and I've traveled. A lot of people don't know that I've traveled. I lived in Australia for a year. I traveled through New Zealand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, China. So I love to travel, and meet people. One thing I found is, as much as I love HVAC, I find that the people's what's really interesting. So whether it be, homeowners, or whether it be, a refrigeration system that's going to feed a community, it still really comes down to being about the people. And I like the mechanics of things, but ultimately it's really about the people.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like to travel too, but I've never made it on that side of the world, so that's really cool.
And that's what's cool
Um,
about the travel,
hmm,
is the different mindsets, the different boxes. So when you meet somebody that's lived an entirely different life, it lets you reevaluate your things. Like when I was in Cambodia, I actually got off the bus to get directions, and the bus left, and I went to the orphanage because that's where they spoke English, and ended up staying there. And you get to see these people that have nothing, right? Like, we complain because of everything that we have to complain about. And then there you're seeing, like, where the kids go up and down the road and they pick up plastic so they can burn the plastic so they can cook on it. And when they go get a fish, they put everything in there, and they suck the meat off the bones, and they put it in the center. They put the bones back in the next meal for flavoring. And they'll have, like, there's this fruit. I don't even know what it was. Like, it could be poisonous. I don't know, but they're like, there's this fruit, and they cut it and they give it to me, who has more than I've ever could imagine. And they're like, "Hey, here, try this. We want to give this to you." I'm like, it's just amazing to see that people were happy without anything. So sometimes I get down, like we all do, and I just have to go back and remember these people I've met that really have nothing, but they have family and they have happiness. So the travel side of it really helps keep me in check of what real values are that sometimes we forget.
Geez, you're gonna make me cry over here. That's some pretty deep stuff there. What was your favorite food you ate while on that side of the world? Anything really cool?
I don't even know, the things I ate, and I to this day, I still struggle eating soup because I have some flashbacks, uh, that I don't wanna talk about,
What was floating in the
like eyeballs, and, like, ants were okay, because if you ate ants, you knew, like, that was good. The ants would eat other things. Like, one thing they tell you, like, I will not eat, what do you call it? Like, the colored rice, because there they color the rice to cover up the rat poop. So that's the whole reason that they diet. So when I come here and I see colored rice, I still think, is that rice, or did they just color it to cover up the rat poop? Like, these are the things that, crossed in my mind. So yeah, it's kind of like favorite food. I don't think about the place and favorite foods. I think about the people.
Ah, okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I love Asian food, but it's probably the American version of most of those foods, so who knows?
Yeah, there's a big
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah, especially eyeballs floating. Emery says, "How do you teach people to test the run capacitor?"
So there's a formula, but I struggle with formulas and numbers. So I use the app. Brian Orr HVAC School has an app, and in that app, it tells you exactly what numbers to get. It shows you pictures of where to put your meter. You get where to get your amps, and then it does all the calculations for you. You enter in what size capacitor you have, and then it tells you, hey, this capacitor is good or it's not good. And so I love apps, and I remember teaching the formulas, and now I'm like, man, why even teach the formulas? We have the apps that can do all that for you. So for me, it's free HVAC School app. Get that app. Go to Tools, test the capacitor live. That's the absolute easiest way.
Nice. Nice. Of course Brian has an app for that. Of course he has a yeah.
I use it all the time.
What's the craziest thing you have seen over the years? You got any crazy stories?
I have so many crazy stories. Like, what really surprises me now when I see a really good installed system, then I get surprised. There's so much crazy stuff. I remember there was a building where they had a package unit on top of the building that had died, and then they put another package unit next to that one, ducted to the first one, and then that one had died. So they put a split system on top and beside of that package unit, ducted into the first package unit that went into the third package unit that went into the building, and those had holes in it, and so pigeons were getting inside, flying into the building. and they wanted me to do maintenance on it, and I was like, no, no, I'm not putting my fingerprints on this train wreck. But there's, oh my gosh, so many stories. It's amazing. And it's like half of me is like so disappointed. And the other half of me thinks, man, somebody was really thinking outside the box. Like, I don't like that at all. But man, you got to think the ingenuity, like for somebody to come up with what do they have? How can they get this working? Was like, it's like, oh, I cringe, but like I kind of impressed at the same time.
Um, it's funny you said that. I was just teaching a low voltage class today, and we were talking about transformers. And I was just in the middle of the class, and just out of nowhere, I just was like, somebody invented. I literally turned around and looked at everybody, and I was like, somebody invented this. Like somebody sat down and started winding copper wires and what? And I mean, how did they? I know how they work now, and I can teach it, but I don't know that I would have ever invented it. I mean, it's just nuts the stuff that people can come up with. So you're saying it from a very creative multiple package units way, but just in general, the way people's brains work sometimes is just kind of funny to me.
It is, and I love the why behind things, like, well, why did it happen? How did it come up with that? And so I've traveled back in time, so to speak, with being able to we can't talk to them, but they leave us stories and finding, like, some of the things that people discovered and what they wrote, and at that time, it was new. And, like, for example, vacuum and how far we could pull, like, all that's discovering that vacuum wasn't an actual power, it was a lack of atmospheric pressure. Somebody discovered that, they did tests on that. And it's amazing to think, these things that we take for granted today, like a motor, that somebody had to come up with that. Like when they started that using windings and seeing the magnetic field, I think it's amazing. And by going back and seeing how some of those studies were done, I can recreate some of that now. Like, here's the excitement they had when they discovered it. How can I bring that to a student and let them reverse discover it? So that's some of the stuff I do is actually from, the old ways when they first did these experiments.
Yeah, it's just nuts. It just really is. Um, Ryan wants to know what you think of the commissioning reports that Measure Quick is doing these days. Do you keep up with all the things that Measure Quick does?
So, oh man, I know that a lot of people are very upset with Measure Quick. I love Measure Quick for simply the fact of nobody has the information as easily as quickly as they do. I love that report because I can print that report out. And the homeowner doesn't know what all these numbers mean, and I don't expect them to. What it does do is it shows two things. One, that all these numbers came from somebody other than just a person. Like they don't know me. I'm just somebody that's there. And two, it has yellow, red, and green as stop signs and caution signs and green check marks. That's something that I can relate to, and I know that homeowners can relate to that. So when they see a system and it's got a score and it has everything's in green in there, they feel, hey, that's good. I like that. As a technician with ADHD, and I use numbers frequently, and I can use the Measure Quick app, and it's giving me a set point, like, for example, discharge line temperature, and it's giving me an actual discharge line temperature. Instead of me having to compare the numbers, it just simply puts it over here in a green mark, and I know, hey, I don't have to look at the numbers and think if that's too high or too low. I just see it's a green, and I can scroll on to something else, and I can look for it makes me faster and more accurate. I'm looking at a bigger part of the system. So I love Measure Quick, regardless of the how the fees are for charging. And there's ways around it. Like that, I don't. That's not part of what I do. I love it because it gives me the numbers where I can interpret those quickly and easily. And I like the Facebook app too. I mean, that's not Facebook, the Field Piece app too. It just isn't. It doesn't have those colorful marks in there, and it doesn't collect as much data as I personally want. So I don't think MeasureQuick has any competition right now, and I like what they do. I'm not saying that everybody has to do it, but man alive, that commissioning report, that's pretty cool.
I think that if anything can be argued, Jim's creation has always been with the the right attitude, I guess it would be the best way to say it, right? He's got his heart's in the right place with a lot of these creations. And, in a world where a lot of homeowners ultimately end up literally being the one to pay for mistakes, He's trying to, at least, whether he's 100% successful always, maybe not, but it's certainly a long ways from where we were. And so I'll say that. And the other thing I'll say is, um bum, 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 I think technicians should maybe even consider it as a cover your cover your butt. Because if they do end up having a breakdown or a callback, at least you've got something that says, hey, I did it right. Everything was installed correctly on the get-go here. So don't be mad at me.
Absolutely.
So
And so I've done consulting work, and it's a whole level of stress because you're going in there and there's a problem that somebody else can't solve. And so you're going in and you have to bring the data. You can't just say, "Oh, yeah, this is your problem." You got the homeowners looking at you, or a building owner's looking at you. You have the company, maybe even two companies looking at you. So having to go in and give that data, that precise data, is important. And one of the things that as a business person, I'm not a great businessman at all. I'm a horrible businessman. But people had asked me, they said, "Well, can't we just get the tools and the equipment and use that same app and solve the problems?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, absolutely you can." And so they usually only call me out once. They start using the app and realize, man, we don't have to pay for this guy to come out, hotel and food, and then we're doing all the work anyways. So they start using the app, and I'm like, "Hey, that's great. That grows the industry. That's what I want. I don't want to be the guy. I want everybody else to have this information so everybody else can be that service technician, that professional, and that's what I want for us all to be better."
yeah, that's a really good point. I like it. I like it. I think I have to mention, because someone may, see this, the powers that be. So I'll just go ahead and knock this out. The FTC requires me to disclose that Measure Quick has sponsored some of our content a while back. So I'll just go ahead and get that out of the way and just make sure I mention that. So,
I did not know that, so that's a good sponsor.
yeah, it's been a while, but yeah, I mean, I think I'm supposed to disclose that, so I just want to make sure I'm covering my butt on that. So, um, I am curious. This is a question that I'll ask folks sometimes, but with you specifically, I'm very curious what your answer is going to be. And my question is, what does a day in the life of Ty Branaman look like?
Oh my gosh, there's not one day that's the same. I think every day is different. Sometimes we'll be in training classes across the country. Sometimes we'll be traveling in the truck, working out of a campsite. Sometimes we'll be in the studio and I'll be pulling stuff out of the sea container to make a video, or sometimes I'll be sitting at my desk writing or typing something, and sometimes I'll be bringing something from the scrap pile and just cutting it open to make it a huge mess. And then sometimes I'm just overwhelmed with things, and I'm just sit there like confused, trying to get started on something, knowing I need to do something, and I just can't get going, which is an ADHD thing. um and sometimes it's considered lazy, and I know I need to do something, but I can't do it. And then other times it's like a firecracker. I can't stop. It'll be 2 a.m. and I'm still working on getting something done, or I have a video that I have to get done now. It's the end of the world. I have to do this video now. I have to get it done now before the world is at peace and I can sleep. And so, that's there's not a normal day in around here at all. Like, nothing is normal around here. You can ask my wife; she'll vouch for that.
I think you're my spirit animal, because you just explained my predicament at times. So I can totally relate to some of that, for sure. My wife gets on me because I'm a night owl, and it's weird how God made us all different, and I will sometimes hit my second win at 10 p.m. I'm just like finally fully awake and the brain's really hitting on all cylinders, whereas she's knocked out, and she can wake up the next morning and be that chipper person at 6 a.m. and just be ready to go fight the fight for the day, where I don't know, it's just weird. Um so anyway, let's see, do you have any horror stories that you can share?
Oh gosh, lots of horror stories. I mean, we all have that same one where it's Friday night and you put a screw in it's too long and it blows a hole in the coil, or you
Oh
know,
my gosh.
those are normal, right? I think like everybody has to do that at least some point. I think my worst HVAC story, like the worst of all time, would be We were doing a change out in a condensing unit, me and my assistant Jesse at the time, and we talked to her at the front door, and we went around and did the work in the back and knocked. We had a problem, so I went to knock on the door, and she wouldn't answer. So I went in. I'm calling, then all the, all the normal steps, being professional. And I'm like super nervous because I'm walking in her house without her permission, and then I see her, see legs, and I run over to her, and she had died. She had died between the moment I saw her at the front door. We did the
Oh
work,
my
and somewhere in
gosh.
there, she had died, and so she had died inside, and I didn't know. And we did all the work, and by the time we called ambulance, I mean, she was like, it was cold, and so I just like, that's probably like the worst service call, and I still think of that. It's like it was yesterday. I can remember the details that the house looked like, the face of the police and EMS when they showed up, the face of the husband when he came home, and he was mad. Why didn't you do something? Like, yeah, that was a bad service call. That was, I don't think I have anything that tops that one, and I hope I never do.
My gosh, that took a turn. Wow.
You asked for the worst one.
No, I know. Just I was expecting, I was in this horrible house and there was roaches. And that's
Oh,
usually the answer
got
I get, right?
I got one of
So
those too. There was, oh my gosh, where there was a pile of cat poop, and where they would just rake it up into the floor. It was like 2 feet high, where they would just keep pouring new kitty litter on it. And the guy had, between his toes there was cat feces and hair, and he was walking around barefoot. And the whole problem was the thermostat had so many roaches in it that the digital thermostat wouldn't work. So when I popped it open, they all flew out. I said, "Nope, we're out of here." And I closed it with my screwdriver, and everything came on. The system ran. It's like, "Oh, great!" And when he paid me the cash, the money stank so bad. I literally taped it to the back of the van and drove it straight back to there's a little shop I worked for. Drove it to the shop, and they left the money outside because the money stinks so bad. So yeah, I got some of those too.
can I not to go back to the really sad story, but how did the lady pass away?
They said she had a
What
stroke.
happened?
They said she had
Oh,
just walked from the front door into the bathroom, had a stroke, and that was it. And they said for her it would have been instant. It wouldn't have been like there was no signs of her like struggling or anything. It just would have been an instantaneous. She dropped and fell in one spot, and it was super fast. They told me that there was nothing that we could have done anyways, but that doesn't really help about what you're thinking. But yeah, it was the good news is, according to the paramedics, it was fast. Now, when the police got there, they asked to see the paperwork that made sure that we were supposed to be there. And the guy, and I know he's trying to be funny, but he goes, "Well, no wonder she died. Look at the bill." And I'm like, what a, looking back, like I can see the humor in it, but at the time I was like, what a jerk.
yeah, read the room. Come on, man. Yeah. Not now. Not now.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Really bad timing.
So I have a fella that joins us every week. His name is Ryan, and he really likes to put me on the spot from time to time. So you can feel free to not answer this question, but he is putting you on the spot. I feel like he says,
Okay.
"What are your top 5 systems of all time in residential, not in any particular order? Do you have any favorites or anything you want to share on that front?"
Installation is everything. I don't have any favorite brands. I have units that I like better than other units, but as far as brands, I don't have a favorite brand. I tell you, if it's installed correctly, that is the key. I've seen people with high-end units installed horrible that don't work well, and I've seen really cheap systems that were installed correctly with proper ductwork, airflow, proper sizing, and is the best the customer ever had, and a mix all in between. So I have no brand loyalty when it comes to HVAC units. And now that technology is changing constantly, we're getting more and more control boards, and then we're learning stuff, right? We put in a control board and find out that power surges is an issue, or something else, and we try to overcome problems with technology, and sometimes it creates new ones. I have been to lots of manufacturer training, and there's stuff that I'm like, man, this is really cool, but I still couldn't say how I like it until I've actually ran it in my own house. And in my own house, I have a 9,000 BTU ductless high wall unit that is like 14 something years old. It is like the cheapest off-brand model there is, and it keeps our house comfortable. So I have no brand loyalty when it comes to HVAC.
We really thought we were gonna, make some enemies tonight, Ty. Come on, man. That was very politically correct of you. Uh,
Well, I wish it was political. It's just the truth. I've worked on so much stuff, and it all comes down to if it was just installed right. If we could just get an installation manual, if people would read that, like there's so much valuable. I really get paid to just make videos on what the installation manuals say. I mean, let's just break it down. If people would read the installation manual, they wouldn't need trainers. And I don't mean to be rude. Like I struggle reading. I struggle reading those installation manuals. So I'm not saying, anything with that, but it's true. Like if you follow the installation manual, most of the problems go away. I went to this last class, this equipment that is overwhelming for me. And after the class, I felt very comfortable with it. But they were like, yeah, everything's here. You have to follow the manual. Every time they had a problem with it, it was something with how it was installed.
I've only been doing the training a fraction of the amount of time that you have, but I even have in one of my classes a slide that says probably a third of the calls that I'm getting, if the technician would just read the instructions, he would not be asking what he's asking me at that moment. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm being serious, that they're they just didn't read the instructions. So
And I get
yeah.
I really don't like doing tech support, but I do occasionally help people, and I have people that I really like helping because, they can give me all the information, and in my mind, I can line the system, I can build the system, and I can see what's happening, and other times I try to help people, and they're like, "No, the numbers are good." I'm like, "Well, they're not because you wouldn't be calling me," and, like, I ask for, like, "What's a super heat?" "Oh, no, it's good." Good is not a number. "What's the airflow?" "It's good." And see, and it really frustrates because I want to help them, but they can't give me the numbers I'm asking for, and they're focused on a problem over here, and I wanna see the big picture because obviously the quick fixes didn't work, and then it's so frustrating because I want to help them, they won't give me the numbers, and they're mad at me for not telling them what the problem is, and it's like, "Man, if you could just give me the numbers, follow my manual, I'm asking for this, give me that number, it's simple." And really, the manufacturers provide these really cool flow charts of what is it doing, yes or no, and it's amazing how much information's in that manual. Read the fantastic manual. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, one of the classes I teach, one of the guys last week, he was megging a compressor, and he's like, "Well, what should it be?" And I said, "I'm not going to tell you what it should be. You write down what it says. I don't want to tell you what it should be because you need to learn that. I don't want you just writing whatever it should be on your paper. So
That's
that's a
right.
good point.
And with the Megger, that's another
Um,
one is, the Copeland mobile app has a specific, AE bulletin talking about megging, and there's a tool, and I don't wanna poop on any brands, but there's a tool out there that says "bad" when the compressor is not bad, and it's been used to sell people new systems when their old system's working just fine, and that's a pet peeve of mine. I think that tool should be reworked or banned or something because it's a sales tool, and it's not actually fixing any problems. But anyways, I'll try not to go down that road.
Ryan has no problems calling out certain people. Uh, we're gonna ignore what he just put in the chat.
I
Um,
didn't even
that
I didn't even
said,
see it at all.
uh, yeah, we're gonna block it on our screens. Um, when I sent you over the possible questions I might ask you, one of those questions was a goofy invention segment. Did you possibly come up with one? You don't tell me what it is yet, but do you have one?
There's been a lot of ideas that I've had early on that I see in play today, and I hear that that happens a lot. So it's not about having an idea, it's about what you do with it. So there's been several
Uh-huh.
things that I had the idea about, and I saw it in production. And I got a good friend of mine, and he's always coming up with ideas, and he's like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" I said, "What I think is irrelevant. Do something with it." So if you have an idea, either make it happen or wait for somebody else to come up with the same thing. So I've had so, and I don't have any regrets because inventions and all that kind of thing, it really isn't my thing. But I think, man, if there was only this tool to make something easier, and then later it comes out. So I've talked to some tool manufacturers about some stuff. I like one thing I like about Subco is they have this Trade Fox program that lets technicians they handle all the other work, and if they have an invention, they will work on it. They do all the development, design, patenting, and they just send people, some royalty checks. So I think that is a really cool thing in industry, and I have friends that have done that, and I have some of their tools that I use because they invented that. So I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, there's been a lot of things that I've come up with and saw it in production later.
I would you be willing to share some more of those? Do you have any specifics? Because I've got one. I just found out, and I don't want to get into the brand and all of that yet. We may highlight it in a later video, but I've been saying for years these brands that are coming out with non-communicating inverters, why isn't there one using the technology that mini splits use? Meaning, technically a mini split is a non-communicating controller, remote control, but then the indoor and outdoor units were communicating. A lot of the non-communicating inverters were not using that same technology. They were using, something more similar to just monitoring the pressure coming back from the evaporator coil. And so I just found out recently that there is a company that has launched something like that, or is supposed to soon. Um, so I just thought, I was like, finally somebody came up with that, and I didn't have to invent it. But do you have any others that any interesting ones?
So getting to know some of the engineers and companies and getting access to some behind the scenes information, it's amazing of what is actually in the works now and ideas that why didn't somebody do that? Like things that are actually being developed is pretty cool. I will never say any of the things that I had an idea about that somebody else did because I feel that takes away from the person that actually did it. I feel like if I
Oh,
said, "Hey, I had that idea," I think it's a disservice to the person who actually did something with that idea. So you will never hear me say, "Oh yeah, I had that idea," except for my very, very close friends, over a beer. But like, I just think they did it. They own all that respect for making it happen.
okay, good enough. Well, maybe someday I'll get you one on one, and you can spill the beans. But that's really good. Uh, let's see. Um, what are so as you know, I I do a lot more content. You do a lot of content for pros, right? I think that would be safe to say. And I do more content for homeowners, for mom, if she's about to buy a heating and air system. What's something that what's a misconception or a an issue that you see with maybe some mistakes that homeowners make when they're, purchasing a heating and air system?
Yes, three big ones. One is temperature. I have a hard time getting technicians to stop thinking in temperature, and it's a whole nother level of frustrating getting customers to stop thinking in temperature. Temperature is entirely irrelevant without humidity. If we were going to use one number, I prefer dew point. Let's use dew point temperature as an actual set point. But humidity is everything about how your body cools itself. It's everything about comfort. So temperature without humidity is completely irrelevant. I hate it when I see these articles. Hey, what's the best temperature to set it at? Because it's irrelevant without the humidity. And also, the humidity is a big safety factor for the house itself, for the humans and the house. When that humidity gets too high, you end up with the word you're not supposed to say, mold or growth inside that house that actually can ruin the structure and poison its occupants. And even if the humidity and the temperature in the house is in the proper range, if the temperature is also too low, you can have your dew point in your walls get too low, and you can have condensation inside your walls, which is a whole nother factor. So when people say, "Hey, I want my temperature to be this," temperature and humidity. You want to be comfortable. And so instead of getting a system that makes the house colder, let's look at a reasonable set point that will maintain the humidity for the health of the occupants alone. Like this, the second one would be sizing. Everybody thinks bigger is better, and in air conditioning, bigger is worse. I would much rather deal with the homeowner that had an undersized system because it's easier to fix than a system that's too big. If their system is too small, we can add insulation, we can add air sealing, we can seal around windows, and we can seal the attics. There's lots of things we can do to make the house more efficient so that that system will keep up. And you can even add a mini split to a room, to help if it's too small. But if a system's too big, you're extremely limited. The only your option is to put a dehumidifier in there, and then now you're using twice the energy because you're having to run the dehumidifier and you're having to run the air conditioner, and the system's cycling on and off, and it's killing it. And that brings us to the third one is runtime. A lot of homeowners think they'll spend the money to buy a bigger system that uses more energy, and then they want it to be off all the time. And we want that system to modulate. We want runtime. When that system is running, it's pulling humidity out. And I tell people, if you're concerned about fuel mileage, would you rather have a big block 460 engine and get to that next red light as fast as possible than stop and wait for the other car to cruise on along and then they never have to stop? That's the idea behind air conditioning. We want that one that's going to be comfortable and not like speed up, slow down a little bit, but never has to really stop. That's what we want. It's controlling the temperature and the humidity. And if I could get technicians and homeowners to understand that together, it would be good. And really, a homeowner says they're only concerned about temperature. A company, hey, they're in the business to make money. They only look at temperature, and then we have the same problems over and over. And then from that, it would be ductwork, airflow. Just it's hit in the attic. It costs a lot of money, so people don't want to spend the money on the ductwork. And a lot of times you'll find though that if you put in a smaller system, even though the ductwork's not great, it can handle the airflow. So it really comes down to that sizing, the sizing and making sure that it's temperature. I don't care about. I care about your comfort.
It's funny you started with that. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm really I mean that was all I was like preach, preach. Uh but one of my goofy inventions a while back was um I said that, with AI coming out, I could see a day where there are systems that will, almost have that eye that some mini splits have, but it will see you in the room and be able to go from temperature, dew point, humidity, and see that you just walked in the door from a long jog down the street. Oh, I need to adjust things based on what the AI technology is picking up. So I just thought that was pretty funny that
Uh,
you
some
led with that. So
Something similar that's been is being invented. I've talked to a lot of manufacturers that or have like this great idea, this great product, and they're wanting to introduce it. And they say, "Hey, what would you need as a technician, or what would you need? What would make this product better?" And so I'm usually giving that advice free because I want things to be better. But it comes down to what most everybody ignores is the shell itself. And let's think about it this way. If you had a boat and you were designing a bilge pump and you spent all of the energy efficiency making the most efficient bilge pump possible, the bilge pump that used the least amount of energy, that moved the most amount of water, and you had like this massive amount of investment into that. At some point, shouldn't you stop and think, maybe we should fix the leaks in the boat? And I think that's where we are in HVAC. We have all this amazing technology on the equipment, on it's moving the heat out of the house. It's a HVAC bilge pump, but then we ignore the house altogether. And there's so much changes we could do with the house. There's people that are putting in equipment that's 2,500 square foot per ton of equipment, and the occupants are comfortable. So it's doable. Then your efficiency is skyrocket high. You're using way less energy, and the customer is comfortable. They're healthy. We're cleaning the air. We're making sure we control the humidity, and the structure of the building is healthy. And that's where we start looking at the whole home together instead of just the equipment. When we talk about what brand, the brand is irrelevant if we're ignoring the home. So a piece of HVAC isn't a piece of equipment. Like, it's an appliance. The whole home together, the ductwork, the shell, the air sealing, that's a system. The occupants, including the occupants, that's what makes it a system. The dryer vent for the exhaust, so the dryer, is a huge part of HVAC. You put in a high efficiency dryer, they move more air. It makes the house less efficient. So you're pushing more air out of the house. That air has to come back in from outside. And you're using bathroom fans. You're pushing air outside, which we need to do, get that moist air out. But then the air is coming back in. So if we are ignoring that, we're doing a disservice to everybody, the customers themselves that don't understand that. Well, we're the professional. I went to the doctor today, and the doctor's giving me all this advice and information, and I say, "Yes, sure, doc, whatever you think. Like, let's do that." And she says, "Well, normally people want to argue with me." I said, "Well, I'm definitely going to go check in everything you said, but you're the professional. I'm relying on you. I'm paying you all this money to get your advice on this, and I definitely want to go check it out to make sure you're not lying to me. But I'm paying you, the professional." And I think in air conditioning, we get so hung up on fixing the equipment, appliance fixation and that number on the thermostat that we forget about the house, the occupant, the customer themselves. And that's what I want. Just look at the whole picture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of homeowners don't think about the, yeah, your system may have been sized properly before, but now you've upgraded your insulation in your older home and you've got those double pane windows and you've messed with the envelope of the house now that's your change you've changed everything now. So there's more to the story here. So man, I'm just you really are just on your soapbox right now and I'm loving it. I'm like, sitting down here with my notepad.
I'm
Um
sorry, I get carried
we
away
do have a
sometimes.
few. No, no, I love it. I really do. Uh, I do see a few more questions in the chat, and we will get to those, especially if your question is already in there. But I do want to say, as we wrap up every episode, Ty's a lot more politically correct than I am. He's just a more wholesome guy. I will go out on a limb and say there are some bad apples in our industry, and in response to that, if you know a good apple, if you know a good heating and air, electrical, or plumbing contractor in this nation, do me a favor, share their name and where they're located in the chat. Let's show some love to those good apples. And you never know, you might be showing them more than love. If someone in your area sees your comment, they may actually send some business their way. So share all the good apples in the chat. Ty, we're going to answer these last few questions here, and then we'll wrap up tonight. Sheldon says, what features in a unit that makes them better at dehumidifying? Bigger coils, bigger air handler? What's the thought process here?
It still comes down to sizing. So we have inverters that run longer that dehumidify better, but the problem is people think, oh, it's an inverter, I can put it in bigger. And so all the classes I'm going to are saying the same thing. Don't oversize the equipment. So it comes down to sizing. And then in some cases like Florida, that you may still need a dehumidifier with the system. So as you're bringing that outside area and you dehumidify straight away. So sizing, then reheat. Other than that, adding electric heat strips, so you're actually heating the house back up as you're pulling humidity out. But a lot of the equipment that claims, hey, we dehumidify better, I mean, they can only slow that fan down so much. There's only so much they can do, and then they freeze up. So they don't monitor humidity. So many of these are like, yeah, we control humidity better. There's no relative humidity monitor in there. They're just putting in bigger cools and flooding them more to try to make more dehumidification, but they're not monitoring. How can you control it if you're not monitoring it?
Yeah. Yep. Ryan, I love this question because I remember you talking about this on one of Craig's podcasts. If your ductwork is in an attic that's not insulated at the roof, is it worth to get that ductwork in a conditioned space? Will it make the house below that much more comfortable?
It depends. There's the Energy Vanguard, Dr. Allison Bales, and Joe Lieberstein, with I can't remember the name of this company, but they're the ones that I really rely to. Jenry Garcia is another great one. Michael Hausch. These are the people that live in that building science realm, and they don't just do this stuff. They test it. They test to see what the results are. So ideally, it sounds like, yeah, if we just insulate that roof line, we put the ducts in conditioned space, we solve that issue. But we also can't ignore the humidity of the attic. So we may have to put a dehumidifier in that attic. And usually we do. So we can't, it's not just a simple answer of if we just do this one thing, we solve all the problems. But I particularly don't like ductwork in unconditioned attics, and I have no way of changing that. But yeah, there's a little bit more to it than that. Dr. Allison Bell's Energy Vanguard, amazing articles on those.
I like it. I like it. And then finally, Ryan says, what's your thoughts on air purifiers and ionizers? Or do you just like forced air and media filters to clean the air? I saw you light up with this
Filtration.
question. You just lit up.
Yes. Filtration. So when we talk about IAQ, there's three things. Control the source. So what is the source of our pollution? Is it chemicals? Is it molds? Is it growth? Is it just simply the air that we're breathing? Two is we want to dilution. That's where we bring outside air in, take some of the air inside and send it back out. So we talked about controlled air exchange, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And then filtration. We want to collect those particles. And that's where you end up with high MERV filters, minimum MERV 13. Now, when I say filtration, people immediately say, you can't use a thick filter. It's going to cause airflow restrictions. Yes and no. If you put a big, thick filter in that little bitty box that came under that unit, you're going to have problems. But if you design a system where you have a transition and you have a larger surface area, you can have zero pressure or almost no pressure drop at all and still filter good. And a lot of systems with people say, there's no way I can do that with this existing system. Cool. You can get MERV 13 filters, tape them together on a box fan. 4 of them. It's called the Coruscant cube, and you simply take a box fan and put all these 4 filters around it, and it filters the air. It can even filter out a lot of smoke from the fires that we have. So filtration is absolutely key. Now, the ionizers and other things like that. So if I had a glass of water, right, and I poured bleach into that water, I could disinfect that water. Absolutely, I could disinfect it. Are you going to drink that water? And so there's a lot of marketing around these air purifiers that we just going to make the air clean. And there's more to it than that. We can't just simply put a chemical in to make the air clean. If we could do that, every factory would just be making the air clean. And there's a lot of science and chemistry that goes into this. And a lot of these companies make millions of dollars selling these products. And they then have a lot of money to hire lawyers. And anytime anybody says anything against one of these products, they sue them nonstop. I don't have the money to fight a lawsuit just because I want to bring some truth in. So I just stay away from that side of it. But I want to say, if you're making a chemical to be put into the air, shouldn't you monitor to see how much of that chemical is a safe level? And one little side note in that, before I knew any better, many years ago, I put an air cleaner in my mom and dad's house as a birthday present for them. And then I had to learn, like, how does it work? Why does it work? And then I learned, wow, that's not a good thing. So I went and took it out. I didn't tell them. I just took it out. And they still tell me, oh, that thing works so great. It's just that thing, our air is so much healthier. It hasn't been there for all these years. So I hear people say, my customers love it. They say good things. I'm like, yeah, I get that. Let's, we could give sugar pills and say, hey, this cures cancer too. And they're going to believe it. That the mindset's very powerful. But I believe if you want true indoor air quality, control the source, right? Let's monitor it. Let's dilute it. Let's filter it. And if you do those things, it's a win-win situation.
Very good. Very good. Well, Ty, you got anything you want to throw out there or end with? Feel free to throw out any plugs to anything you've got going on. Make sure you subscribe to Love2HVAC YouTube channel first of all, but anything else to throw out there, Ty?
Keep learning. Help others when you can. If you do those things, you keep learning new stuff, you're going to help yourself, and then you're helping others. You're sharing that information. Everybody wins. And there was a quote saying, when the facts change, my opinion changes. And that's a big thing, is to keep an open mind, keep learning about stuff. And if somebody's marketing something, sometimes to dig a little bit deeper to find out what's going on. And if you have questions, I don't know all the answers, but I got a lot of friends that I rely on that help teach me stuff on a daily basis. So I'm still learning new stuff. And when I can, I try to help other people. And I think the world would be better if we just kept learning and helping people.
I like it. Well, as always, first of all, thank you, Ty. For the rest of you, we will be back next Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. And as I said earlier, next week's guests are doing some of the coolest things as far as the non-technical side that Ty and I were talking about tonight. And you guys will be able to ask folks that get to do some of the marketing and some of the business aspects of an HVAC business and get to ask them some nitty-gritty questions. So make sure you're here next week. Again, thank you, Ty. Thank you to everyone that joined us tonight. And with that, make it a great week. Take care.